And we're joined by Marianne Murphy, the Liberal candidate in Central Okanagan-Similkameen-Nicola. Thanks for coming in.
You're welcome.
I know you got a little raspy. You've been campaigning your head off out
Yes.
there. And we were talking ahead of this that you knocked on thousands of doors, and you're starting to get in your own mind what the sort of main issue is that people are thinking about. So what is it?
Number one at the door, it's climate change and what I call an eco-anxiety, everyone in anticipation of another summer of smoke-filled skies. I wasn't really surprised by it because when you think about it in the Okanagan, look what we've lived through. We know melts, we know droughts, we know floods, fires. What haven't we experienced in the past 4 years?
Right.
So people are very familiar. But when I ask them at the door, what would you like to see done? They're much less certain. Sometimes they say, I'm not a climate scientist, I don't know, but I know it's our critical issue. We're so dependent on our lake, on our beautiful environment here for things like tourism. We must do something, but I think we should leave it to the scientists to advise us. And that's why the Liberals have set up an arm's length scientific panel to advise them on climate change.
Right. It does seem to me that we have been hearing with increasing certainty that we need to seriously deal with this problem for decades, and the Conservatives and Liberals have taken small steps. A carbon tax, which only just begins to address it, and even that becomes a heated debate. Do you think that it's time to do things bigger than that?
I think certainly all of us have to respond to the voices of the youth around the world, including here locally, who marched for Climate Action Week, who went to the UN with Greta Thunberg last week, who are calling for us to do far more about their future. And I appreciate that because I think it puts the pressure that we need on governments for the public to finally have a consensus. Yes, this is a critical issue. What will we do next?
Right.
I do believe, though, that the center point of all of this has to be the carbon tax. It is the agreed on solution by economists around the world. We have oil companies around the world asking their governments in the United States and in England to impose a carbon tax. And if you recall, we had an agreed on pan-Canadian carbon tax approach in 2016, Justin Trudeau leading the pack, getting the premiers to agree. Followed then by a series of elections where the premier started to say, I don't feel like going along with that anymore. Forget it. Right. I'll take you to court.
Okay, here's the problem. Your Liberal Party bought a pipeline. So, you kind of lose to the Greens right there. They have a hard time believing you'd be sincere given that. I mean, it's hard to fit that into your concern about the environment, isn't it?
Not really. I'm someone who was born in Calgary, who grew up in Alberta, who deeply understands the many years that Albertans paid huge equalization payments to support particularly Quebec and Atlantic Canada when they went through hard times. I never once during my time growing up ever heard an Albertan complain about that. This is the time for the rest of the country to take a look at Alberta, the 150,000 people who have lost jobs in that sector, and realize we're not all Jason Kennys. We can't go around saying, I'll just turn off the taps on you tomorrow morning. There has to be a just green transition. And that oil is going to find its way to market either by rail or by pipeline. And we know that the pipeline is already in the ground to Merritt. We're just twinning it. It has to go in a safer way. We've heard this week they have already developed a more solid form of bitumen. It is already on its way by train now to Prince Rupert to leave that port. So do I think that pipelines are the long-term solution? No. Could this be our last pipeline? Possibly. But we need to look at the situation of Albertans and have a just, reasonable green transition. Other parties, like the Greens, are talking about the need to, say, electrify the whole country. We don't have an electrical grid today that would support all the electric cars that people are talking about. This is going to take a little time. So I think what's reasonable is that the Liberals have committed to net zero emissions by 2050. They're going to cut taxes in half for corporations going to green, zero emissions products and technologies. They are going to establish this arm-length scientific panel, and they're going to support families with loans who want to do energy audits and green up their homes. There's also a significant amount of new money that's already been identified for retraining people into the green technologies. I think that is a plan.
Okay. A couple of answers. We're going to burn up our 8 minutes here. You've got lots to say. So what is your background? Who is Marianne Murphy?
I'm a person, I'm a professor at UBC Okanagan on families, healthy aging, and policy. But I'm a bit of an unusual academic because I've also worked in the private sector for companies like Pricewaterhouse and as a consultant myself, as well as in the public sector, as an example, working for 13 deputy ministers in Ontario. And I've also worked at the United Nations in Vienna. So although I'm not a career politician by any means, which I'm proud of actually,
Right.
I do have a significant amount of governance and policy background to do this job. And my background as a social worker and in community development has made me love door knocking, which a lot of politicians hate.
Right.
And I have now been out to thousands of doors in this riding to take the time that I wanted to talk to people who've been so incredibly hospitable, to stop and tell me what's on their minds on the doorstep. And certainly it isn't just climate.
Right. Okay, so last time around in 2015, when Stephen Fuhr surprisingly took Kelowna Lake Country, your predecessor in the riding you're running in came really close to taking that one as well, which was also a huge surprise. We don't have the same Trudeau mania that we were feeling back in 2015. Do you still think you've got a chance?
Well, the national polls are showing us neck and neck. And after being at thousands of doors and talking with people about what's on their minds, yes, I do. So many people have said after meeting me that they would love to vote for me. And we'll see what happens on election day. It will be up to the voters. But what I think they're responding to in me is a sense that I will be compassionate, I will be thorough, and I will give the attention to every small center in this riding. Because if I've taken the time to knock on thousands of doors, I really am interested in representing the riding and to see improvements here in our life for the issues that they raised with me.
Right. The breakdown when you go from one area of your vast riding to another is that the urbanized voters tend to lean more liberal and the ones across the countryside less so. Is that what you experienced at the door, hearing back from people?
No, I haven't. I've found small rural pockets that are very liberal and some urban pockets that might have seemed maybe more NDP to me as an example. I'd have to say after all the doors I couldn't predict.
Right.
People at the door want to talk to you. They're looking for a sense of your own integrity. They want to talk with you about what's on their mind. Lots of social issues have come up. Seniors care, opioids, youth mental health, huge issues around the cost and availability of childcare, a shortage of childcare workers. I'd say that these social issues, in addition to climate and water, have come up as the second biggest block of issues for these voters. And they know after talking with me that I have a strong background in all those areas.
All right. Well, it's been great getting to know you a little better. Thanks so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
Marianne Murphy, and thank you for watching Kelowna Now.